Thank you, PS. As usual, I'm just going to give a quick summary of all our cases. As announced by the Permanent Secretary today, we have 0 new cases of COVID-19 to report. So there remain 19 active cases in isolation. So 5 of these are all the border quarantine cases that were announced before Sunday, April 18th. 9 are recently announced border quarantine cases, and 5 are the locally transmitted cases that have been all linked back to the RFMF soldier who was infected in a border quarantine facility. So in total, we have 19 active cases in isolation, 14 are border quarantine cases, 5 are locally transmitted cases. There are no new cases to report today. So in total, Fiji has 86 cases recorded with 65 recoveries and 2 deaths since our first case on March the 19th, 2020. 63 of these cases have been international travel-associated cases detected in border quarantine. And then, of course, the 5 recently announced cases, which are our first cases of local transmission in over 1 year. A total of 45,595 COVID-19 laboratory tests have been conducted, with a daily average now of 493 tests per day over the last 7 days. So if you've been listening to my updates, you'll see that the daily average over the last 7 days has been increasing. And the reason is because daily testing has been increasing in line with our response to these local cases. Yesterday alone, 1,114 tests were conducted. And our overall test positivity, which Dr. Fong mentioned, is an important measure of 1, if we're doing enough testing, 2, our level of transmission, community transmission. So our overall test positivity is 0.2%. So that means of all the testing that we've ever done, only 0.2% of all our tests have been positive. And looking at our 7-day daily average test positivity, so every day the amount of tests that we do, how much of that is testing positive, our daily average for the last 7 days is 0.5%. We know that the thresholds that we follow are 2% and 5%. So we know from other countries, once you start having increased positivity, test positivity, and it goes above 2%, it goes above 5%, that's an indication that you're not testing enough. It's an indication that you have uncontrolled community spread. So currently we know that based on our level of testing, we are testing enough. And of course, the testing is expected to only increase as we increase our capacity with the arrival, hopefully soon, of new gene expert machines. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fong and Dr. Lisha. We will take questions now from members of the media. Please raise your hands before we give the questions.
Edwin Nand, FPC News. My question is to you, Dr. Fong. With regards to the restrictions coming into effect from Saturday, I know you did mention what's allowed and what's not, but for the sake of people who are out there, what are the conditions under which people are allowed out during these restricted movement period? And you said police will be monitoring. Are we saying that anyone who's out without a valid reason will be arrested, or what steps will be taken in that regard?
Yes, what we want to do is we want to limit your movements to the essential travel that we mentioned before. We've mentioned that, and I think I've given a previous press conference, I've listed all the essential travel travels that we consider essential. The police will be guiding you in terms of making sure that you do not move around unnecessarily. And they will be empowered to take the necessary action as is appropriate should they find out that you are moving around unnecessarily. Every announcement I make, we will legislate it, like after this, and we go and sit down and we go through the legislation process and gazette whatever I'm saying. So we will be empowered to take the necessary action as and when as is appropriate. Eh? But I guess I'm like I've always said, in our past press conferences, I'm hoping that we do not have to make some law enforcing action in order to enforce our rule. I'm hoping that people will understand that all we need is a little bit of common sense, because these limited movement request is for the purpose of screening and containment. That's all it is for. We're not just doing it because we want to come across as tough. No. The point is screening and containment. So we wanted to keep people still so that we can move around, do a lot of screening, and by you keeping still, the virus will just stop on its tracks.
Dr. Fong, Eva from Fiji Village and Legend FM News. Just in terms of the vaccination rollout, you'd mentioned that it's now the West at the moment. Just for the people out there who are wondering when it'll come to Suva and other parts of the country, can you just give an update on that? And how many more vaccines are we expecting in the near future?
So we will be starting our vaccination next week. There was some discussion about us starting on Saturday, but it's just getting a little bit tough to move that to start on Saturday because of the amount of containment program that we are running. And so we're looking at starting next week early. The latest we will start at Wednesday. We have a target to work with. As I mentioned, we are trying to make sure that wherever we open up, we're not going to overcrowd it. And then we have to make sure that we have all the mask restrictions and things all applied in those areas. How many vaccines we're going to get? The indications are that we're going to get a lot. And the indications are that we are going to get enough for all the people that we need to vaccinate. It just will roll out over the whole year. It won't be, we'll get it in batches. We won't get it as enough for 650,000 people in one shot. Okay? It has to come in batches.
Dr. Fong, Livia Movono. My question is to do with the screening, the community screenings that you're doing right now. Do you have enough people on the ground? Do you require the help of the community and the CSOs? I understand you have some already. If there are people interested in supporting your contact tracing and your fever screening efforts, how do they support you?
I'm glad that you mentioned that. We've actually got most of the government machinery formulated in teams. And I know that in Lautoka they got 4-person teams moving around. And not all of them are health personnel. Some of them are volunteers. How do they get in? I think the best we can do is, because 158 is the number that I know of. So if you can get to 158 and ask them to put you to one of the screening teams, we can see how we can utilize your support. Whether you give us vehicles, or you give us some extra fuel, or you give us something for people to eat while they doing the screening, that would be most appreciated.
With regards to vaccinations, particularly those that you've already rolled out, there are quite a few people now voicing concern at having prolonged effects. Where can they go if they are so concerned to the point where they need to talk to somebody about the effects that the vaccine may have had on them? There are people that are saying they've gone past the 2-week mark, I think it was, that some health officials had said you should expect to feel a little different.
I think we had advertised the number 158 also. They have, within the 158 space, there is a group of people who are trained also to answer vaccination questions, and they will be referred to the appropriate people.
Dr. Fong, Inoki, Fiji's son. With regards to screening zones, you throughout the week you had mentioned that Waivoka, which has been lifted, Nasomo in Tabua, which is also had been identified by the Ministry of Health as a screening zone. My question is, has the ministry identified some other screening zones that has been cordoned off by the ministry, and maybe why, just to explain why have they been cordoned off by the ministry?
Okay, so the process is when you find a positive case, you track their travel history, and every place they go to becomes a screening zone. Then what we do is that we send our teams out to look at the logistics of how we're going to do the screening, investigate how we're going to set up our boundaries, And as I said, I think we've been, it's a bit difficult when we try to do that, and then somebody yells out into the media that we got an outbreak here. You know, for us it undermines our effort, because even before we can start looking at people, some people might start running away. And that doesn't that doesn't work well for us, because they take our presence out of context, they take the news out of context. So that's the process we do. We find a positive case, get the travel history. From the travel history, we define all the screening zones that we need to set up. And once we have cordoned off and sorted out the screening zones, then we announce it. By the time we announce it, we've already started our screening.
So would you be able to identify the screening zones within the Central Division that you have actually been working on?
I've already mentioned the screening zone. The only screening zone right now is at Cunningham.
That's the only one?
Yes.
Okay.
Arietta from the Fiji Times. So my question is, for those that are working in quarantine facilities, do they undergo 14 days of quarantine before they are being sent back home or to the community? Did this happen before the soldier contracted the virus?
Thank you, Arietta. I must say I've answered this question quite a few times in all our previous, and I answer it again. We have a group of people who directly interrelate with our passengers and high-risk people. They go into 14-day quarantine after they disengage. Good. We have a group of people who work in the hotels who are not supposed to engage with the frontline people. People who go in, like for example, I said, we decontaminate a room, somebody goes in, turn the bed sheets over, they come out. When they are out, then the next person goes in. Those are SOPs that held us together for one whole year, for 365 days. We had one breach, and this is what we get. Okay? It doesn't mean that our quarantine conditions are not working. It means it worked, it's just that there was one breach. But right now, our focus is on actually dealing with the consequences of that. The last thing I want to do now is to go and run around and fix up the quarantine conditions and that breach when I know the consequences are still out there, and that particular breach, nobody's going to repeat it. There's just no way they're going to repeat it. They all understand what happened. Okay. I think I'm just saying that I've explained this a lot of times over the last few weeks.
So can you give us an update on the status of the 19 cases or active cases that we have so far?
I do know that we have some concerns about 2 of the 19 cases, but I'm not in a position at this point in time to discuss it further, because there are families involved. They got families. We don't want to be openly discussing conditions of patients without the family actually being notified.
So I'd like to take you back to what you mentioned about possible lockdowns in Suva, Nosori and Lami. Yesterday you reinforced this message. This is the second day running that you've mentioned that you will not hesitate to lock down if the need arises. The question is, how prepared are you? Obviously, if you keep talking about it, there must be some sort of contingency in place. If it were to happen, how prepared are you to make that decision, and how quickly would it come into effect?
I did say that it's dependent on 2 things. It's dependent on the results of the test that we get now. So if we get a positive case and we understand that this person acquired the virus from a place that we already know, and if we know that they could have only spread it to a small group of people, we say, okay, no need to close down. However, if we know that the person can spread it to a huge number of people, yes, lockdown. That's easy. The other one is that if we look around and we see that nobody is complying with our requirements for masks, there's no COVID-safe behavior around the place, then there will be another trigger that we'll have to lock down. I would rather that we don't lock down like that. I want our lockdown to be what I call educated lockdown. You lock down the area you should lock down for the purpose of preventing transmission and detecting new cases. That's it. It needs to be a focused effort.
If the need arises, how prepared are you?
Oh no, if the need arises, we are very well prepared. There are contingency plans. I meet here every morning, 9:30. We talk with the police, we talk with the army. The police have actually reassured me they are ready. If we have to, we will. And it will be quite severe. If we decide to call a severe lockdown, it will be quite severe. And we will not give warning. It will just have to happen.
Dr. Fong, just I know the ministry was in a discussion with the WHO with regards to the vaccine, getting children to get vaccinated. Just can you give an update on that discussion that was held?
So just regarding children vaccinated, why we are not including children in our calculations for how many people need to get vaccinated is because the vaccine that we're using, it's still under study about whether it's safe to use in children. We know that there are studies ongoing around the world, and we're watching them closely. So once those studies conclude, and then we have organizations like the WHO who will then look at the results and then recommend to us whether children should be vaccinated or not. And there are different vaccine trials going on regarding children, and all the different vaccines are trying out these trials on children. So we're just waiting for that.
2 more questions.
Dr. Fong, my question is with regards to the 7 p.m. Saturday to 4 a.m. Monday restriction of movement. You've said that it's a restriction of movement and that the police will police this restriction, and that if you are found moving around for non-essential reasons, that you will be arrested. Is that not a curfew? And can you tell us what outlines essential movements between the hours of 7 p.m. to 11? Forgive me, but the message is a little bit confusing. People need to know, can they be out of the house or not between 7 and 11? And what will get them arrested and what won't?
Okay, when you do a curfew, you know what I mean by curfew, eh?
Yes, you get arrested if you're caught
Yeah,
out.
but you don't go out of the house at all. You don't leave your home at all. That's a curfew. So you find walking around 2 o'clock in the morning, you get arrested. That's curfew. Essential movement is as I defined previously. You want to go to the pharmacy, you got a medical problem that you need to sort out, you urgently need some food, you go quickly, you come back home. But if you're seen loitering around with a group of boys playing rugby or sitting in the grounds drinking, having a cut and a beer, then of course you'll be stuck. I don't think I can be any more. There is a level of common sense when we're talking about essential movement. You have to go for a good purpose. Policing it. When I say policing it, I mean that we will be encouraging, we'll use the police to encourage you to go back home, if I can put it that way. We all know that we don't want to enforce people, we don't want to walk around with 1 4x2 to tell people to go back home. That's not nice. But you'll be encouraged by our security forces to please go back home. And of course, if you create trouble, then we will have to deal with that as is appropriate.
And you had mentioned that there were legislation in place that would empower you post arrests. Can you tell us about the sections of law that empowers you?
We gazette them as we go. For you to ask me to, I'm not a lawyer. I don't remember which section of the law that applies to which part. But we do gazette things as we move along.
Thank you very much. We'll have one more last.
Sorry, Doc, one last one. With regards to restricted movement, have you considered the homeless, where they can go, and how will police deal with them? And part B, if I may, with regards to the funeral, I believe there were some people who still had not been found. How many people are still to be found?
That's an operational detail that we don't keep with us because it's a huge number. And it's a changing number, how many people are to be found. When we do as I said, the first number that we had was 500. we screened 300. And when I checked with the team in Lotoka, they had given us another extra 500 to swab, that they swabbed. So I can only presume that as they spoke to the people they tested, they were able to find out more and more, and the denominator kept changing over time. But that's the nature of a super spreader event. The super spreader event means it's a super spreader. You don't know what's the final number. You just keep on looking, until you get no more new cases for a prolonged period of time. Then you know, okay, I've controlled the super spreader event.
The homeless.
Oh yes, the homeless. Yes, they will. We've sorted out some discussions with the police about how to deal with the homeless, and I mean, I believe that they have it well in hand. There are specific strategies that have been discussed about for the homeless, and we definitely will not castigate them or do anything bad to them. That much I can say.
Thank you very much, members of the media. Binawale Dr. Fong and Dr. Lisha. That's our press conference for today. Binawale.
Thank you.